Hello and welcome to On the Record with White & Case, the podcast about the fast-paced and dynamic world of big law. Whether you're considering a career in big law, studying at law school, or already one of us, this podcast is for you. I'm Barbara Brooks Andrews, a part of the firm's recruiting team, and today we're here to talk about business development at White & Case. I'm joined by Julie McConnell, Associate Director of Global Business Development from our London office, and Macarena Ruiz-Jarabo, Associate Director of Business Development for Latin America, who's based in our New York office. Welcome to On the Record.
Hi, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara.
Could you begin by giving our listeners a brief overview of your role here at White & Case?
Thanks, Barbara. So I look after the business development efforts for two of our global industry groups, the consumer and retail industry group and also life sciences and healthcare. It's a great strategic role, and I'm lucky to have the chance to work with lawyers and BD professionals from all over the world, other business services professionals as well, and also get the chance to occasionally interact directly with clients. Clients in our industries are, of course, the core of everything we're doing as a firm, so I really like playing a key role in this. In addition to this, I run our business development training program for associates, and that's alongside our learning and development team as part of our associate milestone and senior development programs. I'm really passionate about that part of my role as well.
Thanks, Julie. So, Macarena, what led you to become involved in business development on your side?
I studied my career, I studied law school and political science in Spain and in Paris. And after Paris, I started working as a lawyer for 6 years in US and UK firms. I did my LLM in the US too. And in one of my several actually of my performance interviews and assessments, some of my partners would always tell me like, yeah, Macarena, like you're just great at business development. Clients really like you. Clients really connect with you. You're just really good at it. And so I had to actually take 6 months off from working to get my green card and to get my visa. So I took advantage of those 6 months just to meet with people, to talk to people, to understand what business development was, what it entailed, what different kinds of opportunities there were. And I was very lucky to meet and to connect very well with the CMO of a top firm in New York and start working. And I started working actually covering Latin America too at another firm with a very senior partner who's a very, very passionate woman who I truly, truly admire. And I worked very closely with her for 5 years. So I started conversations with White & Case. And I ended up joining after a year. And I've just celebrated my 6th anniversary at the firm, which I am very, very happy. And also similar to Julie, I have a strong connection with clients. I really help kind of like drive the business, focusing kind of like our efforts on client relationships.
Julie, what led you to become involved in business development? I know you've been at White & Case for quite a while, but was there any one singular event or experience that led you to become involved?
My career's definitely had its fair share of twists and turns, including a few sideways steps and leaps into new unknown territories along the way. At university, I was the marketing lead for the Edinburgh University Law Society. I studied law and French at university. And while I was there, I also had some interesting part-time jobs. So some of them had a bit of a sales and marketing angle. I worked for a local jeweler shop. I worked for a fashion brand. I then initially trained and qualified as a lawyer, spending my early years after university working as a projects lawyer in Scotland. I then moved to Brisbane in Australia, where I worked for almost 5 years there, firstly as a construction lawyer. And then I decided to sit my Australia law conversion, and doing that, realised that law wasn't for me. I realised that what I wanted to do was move into business development. I initially had been told in one of my performance reviews that the client piece was one of my strengths, and then also I know I'm a creative person, so combining all of these aspects. So I moved into business development, starting at the bottom, working my way up, and worked at a national Australian firm for a while. And then in 2014, I made the move back to the United Kingdom, moved to London and joined White & Case. And I've just celebrated my 10th anniversary at the firm. So I've been here a very long time. I've always been very ambitious as well and looking for areas of growth and places I can make a real impact. So at White and Case, it's likely to move into different roles, different regions, different practices, and working now with clients and industries.
I know that you have developed your career over time in a lot of interesting ways, but you did mention that one of the things that moved you forward was um, ambition, but also looking for areas of growth. And I'm just wondering how you developed that, particularly here at White and Case, and what did those opportunities and paths look like?
In BD, I think that as long as you're curious and you're willing to roll up your sleeves and you're happy to understand what it is that we as a business do, what the partners do, understand who our clients are and what their concerns are, then you can do it well. You can learn anything, any product really, really well. So I've always been very passionate about that as well, and just really getting to know that, getting to grips with the proper business side of things. And I think that's where business development professionals can really make a difference as well, is that, getting to know the clients really well and being able to connect people internally. So the longer you've been at a place or the more invested you are in the firm in itself, the better placed you are to be able to connect people, connect individuals, and make sure we're putting the right people forward for the right opportunities, make sure we're helping clients to the absolute best of our abilities as well, make sure they receive the top class service.
That was very interesting. Thank you. Macarena, you've talked about how you came to White and Case, and also I'm curious to know how you made the transition between coming from a foreign country, coming to New York, sort of falling in love with the energy of the city, and using that time when you were not actively employed to create new conversations, new relationships, and sort of your own business development. I'm curious to know how you did that, and then onward from there to White and Case.
So I started off, and this is also, part of what business development, what I think business development is, right? I really started off trying to connect with people. So just using LinkedIn every day, trying to make connections, understanding who was in the city, who I could be connected with, people we could have like something in common, and just starting asking people to go out for coffees. And a lot of people said absolutely no, but quite a few, or didn't even answer, but quite a few surprisingly said, absolutely, yes, I'll meet you for coffee. So one thing connected to another, and I ended up in a great firm. So it's really all about, getting out there, feeling, making sure that you feel comfortable with meeting people, with getting to know new people, with asking people out on LinkedIn or whatever other way, but just keep the conversation going, right? And make sure the connections you build on those connections.
Right. So persistence, and also just like some strategic risks, it sounds like you took
yes.
in order to create your career.
I think be brave as well is a key thing here. So Macarena, that's a great example. I think BD, don't hold back, but also I think it's important to be measured and be empathetic, and to be able to judge your audience. It's definitely a tricky career, and it's not cut out for everybody, but I do think that it is an awesome career as well, and it's a really, really great way to, if you're a people person, it's a great way to use your skill set appropriately.
So we've talked about how you came to business development and the circuitous paths that you took. What exactly is business development in the context of a law firm, and why is it so important?
So to me, it's really immediate. It's about connecting the dots and connecting people, and always being on the lookout for new opportunities. That might be externally with clients, or it might be looking for cross-selling opportunities internally. I've always felt that in a law firm, particularly one as big as White and Case and as global and as diverse, having these internal relationships is really key. But I also think that in BD, we also play a really important role on being on the lookout for new opportunities as well, and keeping a real keen eye on the news and what's going on for our clients in their industries as well, and making sure we do alert partners to those things strategically about what the implications of changes around the world might be. It might not be specific to a client, it might be something happening around the world that's major. So, for example, with Brexit, we had a big campaign that we prepared around Brexit, lots of videos to help our clients navigate that, some practical tips. So being on the front foot is really, really important. I also think that some sort of key skill sets you need to be creative. So having creativity is very, very useful to be able to think. Partners are such busy people. They don't necessarily have all the time to be thinking of ways in which to be reaching clients. So having empathy as well, being able to put yourself in their shoes and in the client's shoes is so important. And also, I'd say relentless enthusiasm, which I think Macarena has shown as well, is really important. And you have to be pretty resilient as well. Times can get stressful. So you need to be able to know how to deal with individuals in those situations and be strong as well. But also at the same time, get your measure of people and be able to adapt and to be nimble and just adapt to any situation. Things can change very, very quickly in a law firm. You need to juggle many balls as well. So be very adaptable.
I think everything Julie said is absolutely right. Like at the end of the day, the way I see it is like you really become their strategic advisor, right? As Julie said, like you're their partner. So they, as Julie also mentioned, like they just don't have all the time in the world, unfortunately, to do business development. And also, quite honestly, some lawyers are better at it than others. So they really kind of like rely on you to help them, to guide them, to understand where new opportunities could be seen.
We've talked about what you bring. Perhaps like clients will give you a different answer to what the kind of feedback they're looking for, and that you can bring that to the partners, and certainly like helping them navigate a somewhat uncertain geopolitical landscape. But what role do partners and associates play in business development?
I am happy to take this one, Macarena. I'd say that ultimately partners and associates they focus on delivering the legal services, making sure the legal services are exceptional, and they build personal relationships with clients. We can still do those things in terms of the relationships. We can still do that ourselves, but ultimately they're the ones who are going to have the relationship. But we, in our training of partners and of associates as well, we were just continually forcing the message and reminding them of the message that it is about relationships. At the end of the day, it's about maintaining these relationships. We can also, go away and provide them with things like systems, market insights. We can help them with targeted marketing campaigns, help them to work up their business plans so they have a strategic framework in place in which to manage those relationships. But ultimately, they're the ones that have the day-to-day connection. So it is key that they have their BD hats on as well.
Right.
And what we said with associates as well, particularly in their training, is that not everybody has strengths in the same area, and they should all play to their own strengths. So from a BD perspective, if one partner is great at presenting, we put them up front. They're the rainmaker type. They're out there and seeing new clients all the time. Others perhaps are maybe more discreet. They like to be writing articles. They might pick phone calls. So I think that it's working out what works for them best, what their skill set is, and making sure that matches with what the client's requirements are and what the client appreciates. I'd say that.
Julie, can you tell us about a memorable project you worked on that delivered really wonderful results for both the firm and the client?
Absolutely happy to do that. Certainly, there's been a few really interesting projects that I've had the pleasure of being involved in over the last 10 years, I guess. But when I'm preparing for this podcast, I did cast my mind back to, I think, I'd say a year post-pandemic. The most exciting project was an initiative called World in Transition. This was centered around a digital platform that offered guidance to clients on issues that were likely to impact them. And they were very broad issues, and they were all, of course, going to impact clients in different ways, cutting across regions and sectors. So topics like ESG, energy transition, digitalization. Working in the project, I had to work with people from all over the world, different practice groups, so lawyers, also all sort of every single team in business services. It brought together nearly all of the firm's disciplines, industries, and also all the broader team. And then what we ended up delivering was which was at the time a first of its kind series of webinars with high profile speakers. So this was the sort of key part of the campaign. But I think at the moment, a project I'm working on that I'm really, really enjoying is it's focused around luxury, fashion, and lifestyle. And that's part of my focus on the consumer retail industry. So we ran a really lovely women's networking event at Maison Vene Jewelers in Paris. And that was with some very high profile individuals from across the luxury industry, so clients and also contacts of the firm. We've also pulled together some client workshops, roundtables, a series of short practical videos on a range of topics. And the idea with this is to sort of provide clients with really practical tips on how to navigate challenges and look to new opportunities.
Thanks, Julie. I did read about the luxury event that happened in Paris. It sounded wonderful.
It did.
Good luck.
Many of our listeners are law students or newly qualified lawyers, and the world of business development might be new to them. What advice would you give to them around how to integrate business development as part of their day-to-day work and career development?
In all honesty, as I mentioned earlier, I would just say it's all about connections, right? So just today, just to give you an example, when I was on the subway on my way to the office, I sent 2 WhatsApps to clients. And I was just asking them, whatever, I'm going to be in Mexico in 2 weeks. What's happening with this? What do you think about this? And then another client, oh, do you happen to know anything about this project? Done, right? So just making those connections every day. I would say talking to people, as I mentioned earlier, just using LinkedIn as a way to really remain in touch with people is a very just kind of sometimes easier when you don't feel maybe you're as close to send them an email or a text message or call them. So LinkedIn I find to be a very helpful tool. And yeah, just really getting comfortable with meeting new people. And if you're not, just learn to ask open-ended questions, right? Because that's what's really going to lead you and guide you into understanding what business development is. There's a lot of people who sometimes tell me oh, Macarena, you're very lucky because you went to New York and after 6 months you found a great job and now you're one of the top firms in the world doing exactly what you want to do. There's a lot of talk about luck, right? And there's a great line from Roman philosopher called Seneca, which I always like to cite, which says that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, right? So just prepare yourself for whatever it is you want in business development, whether it's prepare yourself to understand a new client, prepare yourself to understand a new market, a new industry, study, prepare yourself, and the opportunity will come.
Wise advice from Seneca.
I think I agree. It's definitely about connections. And I think that can start really, really early. So when you're in university, or if you don't go to university, people you've met in all walks of life, just stay connected to people. And if nothing else, you've got some great friends to draw upon. But I've stayed in touch with people I was at university with, and some of them are now, CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world, absolutely killing it in their career. And also others that I've worked with as a trainee or worked their way up to GC level, people doing amazing things. And it keeps life interesting as well. But I think what I would say is for juniors not to be scared of BD. There's so many different ways to do it. So focus on what suits you best and what suits your clients as well. Thinking about taking clients to something, you don't need to do what everybody else is doing. You think about what they would like to do and what would suit them. And as Macarena said, don't be afraid to WhatsApp as well if that's the way that they like to communicate. Doing something is better than nothing.
So one of our favorite parts of this podcast is a segment we call Off the Record. And we like to invite our guests to share a story about when things didn't go as planned. With the best of preparation, everything changed. Reality did not turn out the way you expected. Maybe a funny or a surprising moment. Just some sort of instance that was completely unexpected. So I would love if each of you could share something from your experience.
I'm happy to take this one first. It's not a funny story, unfortunately, but I think it is an important lesson for everyone. So when, as I mentioned, after I joined White and Case 6 years ago, and I had previously been in another firm for 5 years, also kind of like leading our Latin America efforts. So when I joined, even if the group was, I'd say 7 times larger than the group at the previous firm, I was lucky enough that I connected pretty well with everyone, with all of the partners, with all of the different groups, and so my job was partly kind of like integrating everybody, right? Because they had all been working very well, but like in silos. So my role was really to integrate that group. So it's all about learning how to manage expectations. It's all about communication skills. I had to learn a lot about communication skills. I'm very Spanish. So, I always say exactly normally what I think in a very direct manner, in a very sometimes aggressive manner. So you have to work on that, right? You have to learn to be more empathetic, to understand what it is they want to hear, how you can connect with different difficult people. So it was a long journey for me. It took me, I would say, up to like 2 years to be able to bring that group together. But I do think that it's part of the job, right? That it's not always easy. You're not always going to connect easily with everyone, and you really need to learn to manage those expectations and to think of alternative ways of working with people when it's a challenging scenario, a challenging situation.
Thanks, Macarena. Julie?
I moved to the Hamburg office. I got up to the Hamburg office, and I honestly have never had such a wonderful reception. It was the most friendly office I've ever been at. I initially, when I got out the taxi, though, I couldn't get a cash machine anywhere, and it turned out that in those days, which actually was not that long ago, you couldn't really use a credit card for some reason in lots of the shops. So I spent about an hour looking for a cash machine. Eventually got to the office, and it started absolutely pouring with rain, to monsoon level rain, and that I was hoping to go for a walk around the city, but then just out of nowhere, 2 associates turned up, the most lovely people I've ever met, and they had umbrellas, and they took me on this most amazing tour of Hamburg, brought me donuts as well, and I gather that it was the children's festival at the time, and they had these most beautiful, colourful donuts. So I think that was a real example of White and Case, and the fact that the kindness and the sense of community, it's really rewarding.
Julie, Macarena, thank you so much for coming and speaking with us on this episode. It's been exceptionally interesting. I'm delighted to have spoken with both of you. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara. It was a pleasure.
You can learn more about our work, our people, and opportunities that we offer at inside.whitecase.com and on our social media channels. Find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram at Whitecase. On the Record is for you, our listeners. So we want to hear from you. Email your thoughts, questions, and topic ideas to us at usgradrecruiting@whitecase.com. Thanks for listening, and please subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss out on more episodes.